Hello everybody, we are PhD students from the Faculty of History at the Nicolaus Copernicus University in Turin. Our topic of the paper is Little Inhabitants of the Crypts, the remains and traces of the existence of animals found during archaeological research in crypts in the territory of Poland. Archaeological works carried out in crypts have been controversial among researchers, believers and outsiders for years. Contrary to what you might imagine from numerous legends, there are no treasures there and, if anything, certainly not those that could be sold. The crypts under the churches hide valuable information about the funeral culture of the modern era. They are manifested by burials in decorated coffins, often upholstered with expensive materials such as silk. The site were also buried in festive costumes, often with devotional items. However, such work is inventory and cleanup. That is, the crypts are cleared of rubbish. Debris, broken coffins, and human bones will be reburied with dignity. It is also important to unblock buried vents and secure them so that no unauthorized person or animal can enter the crypt through them. During this process, numerous analyses are carried out on the preserved objects, including archaeobotanical, anthropological, and cosmology analysis. The aim of this paper is to show that animal remains can also be an interesting source of information on the functioning of crypts throughout history. We would like to thank Marcina and Jan Wiejacki from the Institute of Archaeology, Nicolaus Copernicus University in Turin, for their help with the preliminary identification of the animal remains. During the first inspections of the crypts under the churches, we usually see on picture mostly crushed bricks, remains of wooden coffins and bones are scattered across the threshing floor of the crypt. It is caused by the passage of time and numerous cleanings of the remains of coffins in order to make place for new ones. However, an even more common sight is the enormous amount of garbage that ended up in the crypts through the vents. They were also the entrances to the crypts for outsiders who were looking for strong impressions, treasures, or a hideout during truancy. Such people also often contributed to greater damage by overturning coffins or robbing the dead. However, we will point out here other frequent visitors to the crypts and even their inhabitants animals. They too entered the crypts through vents, attracted by a quiet, remote place that kept them cool on hot days and warmed them in winter. Their presence is hardly visible at first glance and is often overlooked as they are not the main focus of research in crypts. In this paper, we would like to point out what elements may indicate that animals choose a crypt as their place of residence. Our experience comes from many years of research conducted by students and PhD students under the supervision of PhD Małgorzata Grupa from the Institute of Archaeology in Turin. During many years of research, traces of the occurrence of animals in crypts were identified during studies of the churches of the Holy Name of the Virgin Mary in Szczuczyn, Holy Trinity in Radzyń Podlaski, St. Nicholas in Gniew, Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary in Piaseczno, Holy Trinity in Biszewo, St. Dominic in Płock, and St. Martin and Nicolaus Cathedral in Bydgoszcz. The first easily noticeable way to check the presence of animals in crypts during archaeological research may be a thorough inspection of the coffins and robes of the decayed. Such observations were made during the research of the crypts in the church in Gniew. It was then found that the human remains and ropes were severely torn. Also, in several places, it turned out that the coffins were scratched and in some places chewed. After analysis, it turned out that in addition to human bones, there were also animals in the coffins. They were marten bones that entered through the vent. Thanks to it, they endured various rubbish, hunted animals, and lived among human remains. Probably several generations of these animals lived there, which had done a lot of damage over the year. A characteristic trace of the animal's habitation in crypts are the gouged holes in the coffins. Rodents can be lured by decaying corpses, feeding on insects and herbs in coffins. The wooden coffins also provided an ideal place to hide and live. In colder periods, in autumn, winter, and early spring, animals can warm up in coffins, and these places can also hide from other predators. In the crypts in Szczuczyn, a burial was found with a beaten hole at the height of the chest. There were feathers inside that testified that the predator had carried its prey there. An interesting example of the bringing of prey and food by small carnivores is found in the coffins at Biszewo. Inside, researchers were surprised to find more than 50 table tennis balls. The mysterious find was quickly craned up by local farmers. They hid small balls in hen houses to confuse the foxes and martens, who, thinking that they were stealing chicken eggs, were stealing plastic balls. Another type of traces of the presence of animals are the mummified or vitrified bodies. Such animals fell prey to predators, were carried into crypts and eaten. All that remains of them are single bones or feathers. Similar traces were visible in every crypt with an accessible vent, and as an example there may be finds of feathers from coffins in crypts in Szczuczyn, as well as individual animal bones found during research, among others in the crypts of the church in Radzyń Podlaski and Piaseczno. We can also be sure that some of the animals could simply get lost in the crypts, or be in it at the time when the vents were filled up or bricked up. These animals are most often found near ventilation openings, such as, for example, skeletal cat remains in the crypts under the church in Łuków. During archaeological excavations in the crypts in Szczuczyn, mummified remains of a mole and a bat were found, entangled in the fabrics of the buried dead, that they probably sought shelter and must have become unhappily entangled in the fabrics, remaining there until they were found by archaeologists. When researching crypts, especially when tidying up the vents, you can also find bone fragments of large livestock. Their presence should be associated with the frequent but not very glorious practice of throwing rubbish, rubble, and soil into the vents of crypts after cleaning the vicinity of the church. Animals' bones dug out of the ground from nearby rubbish dumps ended up in crypts and mixed with human bones. Such bone finds took place during the research in the church crypts in Płock and Piaseczno. In addition, animal bones found during excavation in churches are not uncommon. Their large amounts were found, among others, in the backfill layers of the burials during archaeological research in the church in Gniew. Animals have accompanied man for centuries, and as the paper presented shows, even after his death. Crypts, which were supposed to be the resting places of the dead due to their seclusion, concealment under church walls, darkness and silence, were an ideal place for animals. Unfortunately, their traces of activity are often unnoticeable, and we can only talk about them thanks to small clues. An archaeologist or historian investigating crypts must be ready even to collect and identify remains, feathers and small bones in order to decipher interesting stories from them. The next step will be cooperation with archaeologists, resulting in full identification of animals' remains from individual crypts. Such analysis, together with the results of archaeological research, will contribute to a deeper knowledge of the secular functioning of the church and its surroundings. The paper is only a small premise for a larger study, which is the analysis of animal activity in the crypts of churches. Thank you so much.